What happens when you put several ant colonies together? Will they engage in war? Or will they join forces? In ant keeping, it's a golden rule to never mix your ant colonies together, even if they are the same species, because most ant colonies will fight. And it's cruel. You see, each ant colony carries its own distinct colony scent, like an ID badge. And if two teams of ants with different colony scents happen to come together, by way of overlapping territory, for example, it would lead to a lethal ant war. However, there are some cases where this golden rule does not apply. This week, I tried my luck and put together 7 young ant colonies of mine that I've been raising over the past 67 days, together in a single living space to see what they do. Did the ants go to war? Or did they do what I had hoped they would and join forces to form one huge super colony?
They would never.
The result was just jaw-dropping and something I totally didn't expect to happen at all. Welcome to the Ants Channel. Ant Channel.
I have a question though. You guys,
subscribe to my
different colonies, but one of different races.
Welcome to the AC
or whatever you want to call it. I don't know what it's called. Different
family?
Species
Before
kind.
Any of you start freaking out.
Whatever. I don't know what the term is. What's the term?
Cruelty,
Breed.
I have a few things to explain as to why I figured the odds of such an experiment were in my favor. Do keep on watching until the end, though, as I have an important question to ask all of you, and will be needing your opinions on something very important. Now, before I go over my reasons for performing such a controversial experiment, and then proceed to attempt the mixing of 7 ant colonies together, let's do a quick recap for those who are new.
But Chad, what if you have like fire ants, like Japanese ants, Chinese, I don't know, underground ants, bunch of different ones? Wouldn't that be even a better experiment?
And are just joining us.
These are all the same species, but different colonies.
These are our 8 young carpenter ant colonies. Each colony exactly 67 days old. Within each test tube is a queen, her first generation of worker ants, known as nanitics, and brood. I captured each queen 67 days ago during their annual mating nuptial flight.
67
Placed
again!
them into test tubes to simulate the claustral chamber which the queens would have created in the wild. And each queen spent 67 days laying eggs and eventually raising them to adult nanitics. Now, the initial plan when I first started this journey was to simply capture as many queens as I could. I caught 14 in total, and see how many of them would go on to found successful ant colonies. I knew that in nature, not all queen ants successfully make it to the colony founding stage. And in fact, at the start, I wasn't sure if any of my 14 queens captured would successfully found an ant colony. 6 of the queens ended up non-successful at even making it to the egg-laying stage. Some died of natural causes like mold, mites, and even parasitic maggots. But then,
what am I watching?
The remaining 8 queens started
I'm gonna get nightmares. That's fucking vile.
I began to realize that, okay, I won't be able to keep all these ant colonies. And in my mind, I figured I'd have to release some, or all but one of the colonies back into the wild. It was sad to think, as over the past 2+ months, I'd really grown attached to each of the ant colonies under our care. But then, after thinking about it this week, an awesome idea came to me that was pretty crazy, but just might actually work. AC family, listen to this. So here's why I thought this experiment was a pretty good idea. So quick ant biology lesson, most ant species have colonies that are called monogynous, which means the ant colonies contain only one egg-laying queen, who lays all the eggs and is the mother of the entire colony. Like fire ants, where there is a single queen ant and her millions of workers.
Chat, but does that not become at one point non-efficient? If you had more queens, you could get a bigger colony faster? Like, it is very, very slow.
And babies. That's just how fire ants operate, and non-negotiably. There is definitely no way a fire ant colony will adopt or accept a second egg-laying queen ant in the colony. Furthermore, only related colony members are allowed in the nest, so fire ant workers from another colony are not allowed to join forces. Two fire ant colonies coming together, as we've seen in a past
30,000
video,
eggs a day?
will engage in a bloody war. There are, however, also ant species which are considered polygynous, meaning they do tolerate multiple queens in a colony.
Okay, yeah,
like in
smart.
weaver ants, where there could be dozens, even hundreds of queens, all laying eggs in a single ant colony. The workers just take care and serve all queens. Our yellow crazy
This
ant
is
colony,
disgusting.
the Golden Empire, is another example where there are lots of queen ants in the colony. And they are so polygynous that even if two unrelated yellow crazy ant colonies are placed together, they kind of go into a quick wrestling match, but then decide to join forces, accepting all new queens
Wait,
and
really?
blending harmoniously to form a super colony.
Chat, what did they get?
Which we've seen
What did they get confused? Because they tussle so much with one another that they end up exchanging smells, and they don't even know who the fuck smells like what. And they're like, "Fuck it, I guess we're."
happened a couple times on this
yeah.
channel already with our
What?
Golden Empire.
I love
And
Could
so
that be the
going
reason
back
why
to
they
our
do that?
carpenter ants, there are actually carpenter ant species which are polygynous. In terms of the carpenter ant species we are keeping, I don't have an exact species ID on them yet, but there are carpenter ant species in my country that are known to be polygynous. In fact, we've kept them before on the channel, if you recall the lumberjacks. Now, if you remember
I
the
remember that,
first
yeah.
video, the nuptial flight of these ants kind of occurred inside my room, a cottage I'm currently staying at in the middle of a mountain rainforest. And over time, I have been spotting evidence around my place of the main carpenter ant colony, from which our queens and/or the males that mated with them most likely came from.
Yo,
In the mornings, I would
imagine you're the owner of this Airbnb. This guy says, "Oh, guys, I'm only here for a month. I'm making a few videos." And then you look at his channel. He has these fucking massive ant colonies
always
and
find
shit going
bits
up
of
the house.
sawdust
Oh,
in certain
no.
places, discarded as a result of the ants' tunneling activities
hiding in the router.
wooden structures of my place. And at night, I spotted carpenter ants forming active foraging trails around my kitchen. These carpenter ants, which were definitely the same species as ours, were a pest species and well adapted to living in domestic spaces. I then began to wonder if the mating nuptial flights of this species of carpenter ant can happen indoors. And assuming an ant colony sends out hundreds of these queen
17
ants,
months.
and knowing the
17
success
months.
rate that we've seen
And I
from a
get a
14
welcome to
queen
the jungle
sample
king
is
they
about
gave $1.
57% that a
Wait,
queen
wait.
will successfully mate and go on to found an ant colony, then the chances of 2 or more carpenter ant colonies coming together naturally and overlapping in real estate is pretty high, I'd say. Now, I've never seen a carpenter ant war in my place so far, and so my hunch was that a handful of mated queen ants of this species of carpenter ant end up founding ant colonies somewhere in the walls and form one massive ant colony. I mean, think about it. Where else could the queen ants go to found their ant
What the
colonies
fuck
and
is
not
wrong with this
expect
guy?
to run into a bunch of its sister queens' colonies if they were limited to just this cottage? My guess was that they simply all blend together and form a super colony. Now, if my hunch was correct, and these ants of ours were truly a polygynous species, whose colonies can combine together to form super colonies, then I could actually end up keeping all the ant colonies and not have to
Oh my
release
God,
them.
God forbid
I
it's
could
a
just
hobby.
combine them
But what about
into
the house,
one
though?
huge colony. That would be totally awesome. And the dream of having a polygynous carpenter ant colony with all these egg-laying queens laying tons of eggs made my ant-loving mouth water. Imagine the massive ant setup we could build with wood and glass. Anyway, a third possibility is that the ants from the different colonies simply tolerate each other, being around, but don't actually mix. In this case, the ants would choose coexistence, which would also be quite cool, but I don't know how long I'd be able to keep the colonies together in one setup as they grew if that was the case.
Yeah, what if they would have to compete at one point?
Was it risky putting the ants together? Yes. But for me, AC family, the odds were in our favor, and it was worth testing out in a controlled way. For science. What do you guys think will happen? Will the ants go to war with each other? Or will they choose peace and join forces? Or will they ignore each other and accept coexistence for now? Leave your guesses in the comments, and afterward, go back to your comment and let us know if you were right. And so, AC family, here was my ultimate plan for the Great Carpenter Ant introduction. You guys will love this.
Yeah, I
AC
think.
family, behold, the Campanosium. It's the great arena within which the ant colonies will have the space to wander and explore, and eventually meet, in a highly regulated and controlled manner, where I could observe how they interact and separate the ant colonies if needed. There are 8 holes leading into the arena with rubber ports, which perfectly fit the test tubes in which the colonies are currently living. I made sure to keep minimal with the design of the arena for now, so I could have full view of the ants and not have the decor create areas where the ants could be out of view. We can always decorate this space more intricately later. The top lip of the Campanosium had been painted with a layer of baby powder
He's
and
giving
rubbing
ideas to
alcohol
Mr. Beast
to
with this
act
one.
as a barrier, so the ants don't escape into my room. So my plan was to first connect 2 ant colonies to the Campanosium and observe how they interact, before going ahead and adding the other ant colonies. I would not proceed to add the other ant colonies if I noticed they were showing signs of over-aggression or going to war with each other.
Why not?
Now there are 2 things you should know about this before we proceed with this experiment in the Campanosium. First, if you've been following our previous videos, you will know that I suspect that our 7th ant colony, which today is one of the biggest colonies of the group,
Guys, they're ants.
with a total of 12
cares?
nanitics now, might actually be a different species of carpenter ant from the rest. How weird. The queen is looking right at us.
Guys,
She's just making sure.
guys, I care about the ants in general, but these are like a small miniature sample of a massive
We're friends.
army
But
of
as you
them.
can tell, this queen is slightly more red at the head and thorax than the others. Plus, she produces brood with naked pupae, which is unique because the other 7 queens produce young that develop into cocooned pupae. Therefore, I have decided not to add colony number 7 to this mixing experiment, as they probably war with the other ants. I'll just hold on to them for now, and we can all decide later whether or not we want to keep them. But man, look at those repletes, will ya? The workers who have volunteered to be the living food stores of the colony, carrying food stored in bulk in their social stomachs for gradual distribution. Love this
What?
colony. Alright, now the second thing I needed to point out was that, as you may know,
Ew!
queen number 5 is still raising her brood. As you can see, she's behind the others and just has cocoons. And because of this tardiness, we suspected that she may not have mated during nuptial flight. You see, as mentioned in a previous video, due to ant genetics, unmated queens can still lay eggs, but they only become male ants, which would suck because male ants have no purpose in the ant world, except wait around to mate, which also means in the normal circumstance, if these huge cocoons, which do look like male ant cocoons, do actually hatch into
It's just
males,
like real life.
the queen is as good as dead.
But
because
these
the
days
males
they don't-
wouldn't be able
even
to
then
take
they don't
care
mate,
of her.
so-
The other possibility is that she's been eating some of her eggs over time, so she could invest in fewer, larger workers, as her first batch of nanitics.
W
We're
Black
still
Pill.
waiting for one of those cocoons to hatch to be able to know for sure. It should be soon because I see eyes darkening, which means hatch day is close. If males do end up hatching from those cocoons, it was sad to think that queen number 5 and all her useless male babies would have to be released into the wild to die. However, if my hunch was correct, and these carpenter ants do band together to form polygynous ant colonies, it would be a complete saving grace for
chat.
queen number 5.
Chat, fuck the woke shit. Chat, how about ant world war? All known species of ants, test tubes, brrrr, like 160 tubes, all at the same time. Bang!
And her sons, because
Ant
then
World War.
I could simply introduce them to the other ants, and she would then have proper workers from the other colonies to take care of her and her sons. Sure, queen number 5 wouldn't be able to produce regular worker ants and would just be dead weight for the colony, eating up valuable food and
Bullet
taking
ants
up
don't win
resources.
too big. They would
But
get
at
swarmed and
least
overheated.
She would live and at least contribute
I think,
to the
yeah.
colony's male ant population for the next nuptial flight. Having number 5 in the mix also would be a great way to tell if the workers are actually all mixing up and not just sticking to their biological birth colonies. Because if Queen number 5 and all her males remain alive, then it means workers from the other colonies are definitely...
Last pause. Ant World War. 5 species of ants per major country, right? All at the same time. See who actually wins. In a boom.
Feeding her and her sons. And so this was the plan.
What countries get the best
7
ants?
of our 8 ant colonies to the Campanosium. But before we go ahead and make
Ant
the
World Cup.
introduction, there was one more thing I needed to do. Food. I placed in a cup of sweet jelly, so the ants had something to do while in the Campanosium. And what better way to bond with new friends than over dinner? Or actually, in the case of these ants, which are nocturnal, breakfast. Also, in terms of the 8th hole, I'm blocking it off with cotton for now, as I can use this opening as a port to connect to other setups in the future. Okay, Sea Family, here goes nothing. Are you ready? Let's do this.
I'm ready.
I took colony number 1. Wow, I've always had a special love for colony number 1, probably because it was also one of the largest colonies of the bunch. Also with 12 worker ants now. But guys, have a look at how big the queen is.
He sounds like the
Last
scholars
week,
guy.
before we gave the colony their first meal ever, the queen was a bit skinny, right? But it seems, AC Family, after we fed them, it triggered her body to
ready?
make that biological
Get your pen and
switch
paper,
over
scholars.
to full egg production mode. And her gaster was now swollen with upcoming eggs, a condition known as physogastry. I love when queens get physogastric and all fat like a balloon. It's a good sign many more eggs are about to come. I know a lot of you guys are fans of this colony as well. I took the colony and attached it to the Campanosium. Once attached, I now needed to release the ants. However, I didn't want to just rip away the huge cotton blocker because the claustral cell still needs to remain as still and wind-free as possible. So to create the new opening tunnel into the outside world, I have this. A small piece of tubing. I could just fixate it to some cotton, and it could act as a small door for the ants. I placed the tubing door and cotton into the test tube. I held my breath as I watched the first worker ant emerge into the outside world for the first time in its entire life.
Seems like maybe he's into expansion or whatever it's called.
This was such a special event to witness. Prior to this moment, the ant had only known the test tube claustral cell in which it was born. But nothing was more amazing to this ant than what it was seeing and smelling right now as it stepped onto the Campanosium grounds.
Okay.
To
No, ask me how I
explore.
know. I've seen it. It's like some animated thing where it's like some animated character, and they start growing in size, and then their parts get massive. Yo, why is asking me? I don't know where I saw that. Why?
A second ant
It's
came to
the
smell
thing.
the
It's like
fresh outside air.
it's a king that some people have. It's like some expansion king or something. Not me. I've seen that by accident.
The curious brave worker began to wander around. It was at this time that I realized, oh yeah, it's time to add the other doors and block the ends of the tubes with cotton so the ants don't escape. It would also make connecting to the other test tubes much easier when ready. Eventually, the first exploratory ant discovered our sweet jelly and began to feast. The ant filled up its social stomach to the max. And once fat like a water balloon, full of sweet jelly, it began to embark on its way back to the colony.
Okay.
It was at this time
I don't mean you should do that. But what if this was bad food, like poison? And would this guy be cast out? He's gonna feed his boys full of poison?
that I decided it was now time to add colony number 2. Also an active and very promising ant colony, colony number 2 seemed like they were eager to break free ASAP.
That's how ant traps work.
Attached. AC Family, let's watch. To my surprise, the ants of colony 2 were not as eager to emerge. They waved their antennae outside the door to smell, but didn't come out. But then something happened that made my heart stop. The full ant of colony 1 was heading straight for the opening of colony 2. Ah! 2 pairs of antennae touched, but the full ant thought twice about entering that hole and headed towards the correct nest opening of its birth colony. Whoa. Okay, so no aggression so
Yeah,
far.
don't enter that hole.
Was a good sign. Inside colony number 1, the brave exploratory worker told its entire colony of the awesome food it found just outside the nest and began to regurgitate it up to have the rest of the colony have a taste. This nanitic had done the colony proud. They would be sending out more scouts soon. But as for colony number 2, still
The
no
queen is
emergence.
disgusting.
Just
xQc,
antennae
love
poking
you,
out.
excellent chat.
Perhaps
Can
they
I
weren't
get a
ready?
welcome to the jungle?
Colony number 1 sent out its second scout. It crawled bravely across the barren rocky surface of the Campanosium.
Dude, I would look send
following
one
the pheromonal trail.
to work
the
really
last
hard.
scout left
You'd
on its
come
way back home,
and I'd
all the way
bang.
to the goods. Bingo! It stopped to fill up.
Just because.
And also made its way back home.
All the way home?
Like the first scout before it, it began to regurgitate the contents of its social stomach to its fellow colony members, and
Dude,
then
it's
to its
breathing.
beloved queen. But looking at colony number 2, there still seemed to be no interest in emerging into the
Did they get
Campanosium.
itchy?
Just a worker at the door, waving its antennae out. This was a little disappointing, but I surely didn't want to rush them. Colony
This guy gets a sweet juice, all the nutrients, num num num. Oh wow, all the taste buds, and then he shits it on the ground for everybody
Number
else.
1 had now sent out its third scout to collect food. It was at this time that I made a very split decision.
Oh, you
I don't know
puked it?
why. Perhaps
Oh.
I was just too eager to see how the ants would
That's
interact
worse.
upon meeting. And considering the fact that colony number 2 wasn't ready for an introduction yet, I made the executive decision to proceed to add colony 3 to the mix.
True.
Like Colony 2, it seemed Colony 3 was not yet willing to emerge. The third scout of Colony number 1 made its way back to the colony with a full gaster. Man, Colony 1 was just doing so well at this. Great work, Colony 1. The queen feasted happily. A worker from Colony 3 kind of emerged, but seemed a bit shy still. Colony 2
Can't-
still
did the
waving those
queen not
antennae
move?
from inside, and Colony 1 sending out their fourth scout now, who crawled across the rocks over to the sweet jelly. Finally, I
Guys,
spotted a worker from Colony
they're born
3
to
getting
rule,
more brave
but they
as
can't
it
move.
wandered outside the hole. Fourth scout of Colony 1 was now full and making its way back home. The workers of Colony 1 were just killing it. They sent out a fifth scout, which wandered around the Campanosium, and at one point I thought it was going to come in contact with one of the other colonies, but nope, it was more interested in eating.
Okay,
as the
at
fifth
least.
scout from Colony 1 began to head back home,
Yo, look how
and I saw that
inflated
there
that
was
is, though.
still no hope for
xQc
Colony
L.
2 nor 3 to emerge. I again made the sudden split executive decision to go ahead and add the fourth colony to the mix. Yes, I was crazy, I know. I just really badly wanted the ants of the different colonies to interact. But of course, these were ants, and they can't always do what we want them to, right? When attached, a worker emerged from the hole cautiously, with other workers behind it. It wandered around a bit, but then re-entered the nest, not willing to risk wandering further. No! That's it! I attached the fifth colony, which of course had no workers yet, and the sixth colony. One of these ant colonies should be ready to
Good
come
night,
out,
Mr. XQC.
but every time
Could you
I
give
made the
me a kiss on
attachment,
the forehead,
the ants would
please?
just kind of
Or maybe
peek out
just tuck me
and
in
not
if
come
that's
outside
too
to
much.
forage. I decided to go all the way and attach the final colony.
I'm gonna say how it is. I think it's an unfair test because it's inconsistent on the outside border of the con swab. I think maybe they get lost because it looks like it's scary. It's inconsistent. It has
Colony
to
8
flush.
to the mix. This is when things
Look, they
took a
guys, they don't know like it's inconsistent from the plastic to the cotton swab. Like, come on, bro.
very scary turn. And when I began to realize that my impatience might have been a huge
Look, see?
mistake.
All the exits are different.
While I was busy connecting the other colonies, I hadn't noticed that a scout was finishing off its meal. I had assumed it was
not an
colony
expert,
number
I just think
1's
it's-
sixth scout. That was until it began to head towards the opening of colony 3. Oh? Wait a sec. Was this a worker from colony 3 that finally decided to emerge without me noticing? Yay! Finally, Colony 3 was sending out its scouts. Perhaps now 2 workers from different colonies would meet up. But AC family, I was not prepared to see what I saw next. A meetup of ant strangers was exactly what happened. I expected the full scout to come rushing into the test tube like usual. But instead, I saw this.
He probably smelled it then.
Look whom I found entering our premises, ladies. We've got a trespasser in our midst. A worker had the scout who was encumbered and full of jelly by the antenna.
That means
This
he's more
was
heavy.
not a scout from Colony 3. It was the 6th scout of Colony 1
Then we can
that
help
had
him?
wandered into the wrong hole. Oh no! I tried not to panic. They weren't spraying formic acid yet, and there was a possibility this was the wrestling ritual prior to the process of ant colonies eventually joining forces. My heart stopped as I watched to see what the ants would do next. A second ant came around to smell the newcomer. She seemed quite interested in her full gaster. Oh, I hope they weren't going to kill her. A third ant came to inspect the strange ant with a different
3.
colony scent that had been dragged in. Again, the full gaster was of great interest. A fourth ant came to smell her out too. The full ant tried to remain calm in the face of this very tense moment and tried to sneak away, but it was no use. This worker was not about to let go so easily.
Hey, let it
Why
go!
leave so soon? The worker sneered at the trespasser. Our queen would like to see you now. Instantly, the scout tried to burst away and make a run for it, but the sudden struggle caused a blob of jelly to come bursting out of its mouth
It's
from
gonna
its
distract them.
full turgid crop. The other ants seized the opportunity and drank from this blob
I knew
like
it.
desperate hyenas, hoping for an easy meal. Let me go, the ant pleaded. It was then that the giant queen approached to inspect her minion's latest catch. Now, who do we have here? The queen inquired as she waved her antennae cautiously to smell. Workers continued to drink from the blobs of jelly barfed up as a result of the ants' complete fear.
Ew!
It was at this exact moment that I completely regretted this entire experiment. But one thing I did notice was that they still weren't completely killing this ant trespasser. There was no formic acid spray, no tearing of limbs, no panic, just antenna cuffs and inspection. The full ant seemed
They're
paralyzed
interrogating this
with
motherfucker.
fear
Where did he
and
find
almost
this juice?
surrendered to her fate at the hands of these foreign ants. But then, suddenly, the ant who had been holding the ant hostage the whole time got hungry. She was envious of the ants that were able to have a taste of the sweet jelly. So she released her mandible grip and attempted to get the hostage to barf up more jelly. Give me some of that. That was enough for the ant to then spring into action and escape. It leaped up to its feet and ran out the door. It almost went into the hole of Colony 2. But nope, it wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. It quickly cleaned its antennae so it could smell better and headed towards its home scent. It ran back to the correct opening of its true colony, Colony 1, and rushed through the door as fast as it could. OMG guys, you won't believe what just
maybe
happened
they're
to me.
gonna get mad at him.
Boy, was she glad to be back home and safe. She proceeded to regurgitate the contents of her jelly collection to her beloved colony members.
Maybe he
I
smells
stayed
like
up
them.
to monitor the colonies over the next few hours, but none of the colonies had sent out scouts. Only Colony 1 seemed willing to send out scouts, and there were times they'd come across the other holes but would never decide to enter, nor would there be any signs of aggression from home court. This experiment did not turn out the way I expected. But AC family, now that you've seen exactly what happened, here's where I need your help. The foreign worker ant was dragged into the nest. The ant wasn't killed nor sprayed with formic acid. It was met with semi-aggression, and the ants even tried to feed from it. So my question for you is, what should we do? Should we keep them together and observe what happens, or should we have stuck to the golden rule of ant-keeping of not mixing them? And should I separate them now before this escalates and we actually lose ant lives?
I thought he was...
AC family, please vote under the pinned comment of this video by hitting thumbs up on either the post "Keep them together" or "Separate them now." I've been monitoring them non-stop, but I'm actually
Where are the posts at? Keep them together. Guys, look. I'm under these degenerate viewers. Look, all these guys want, they just want blood.
Unsure what to do here, as the
4
results
years
aren't
ago?
very conclusive yet. Is this just the equivalent of the typical wrestling that happens prior to colonies joining forces, or
Watch all of episode today.
last week? AC family, let's get right to it. After the craziness of last week's episode, the outcome of our little experiment of mixing 7 ant colonies together in hopes that they were a polygynous species of ant, i.e. an ant species which allows multiple queens per colony and would allow for separate colonies to peacefully band together
But how did they spawn
to form one huge
a
super
new
colony
queen?
was quite shocking and a bit of a nightmare. For me anyway. But do stay tuned until the end for a special surprise reveal, as well as for the vote, where I'll be needing all of your help to make another important decision
RNG?
regarding these ant colonies. Now, before I explain what happened as a result of keeping the 7 ant colonies together in the Campanosium, for those of you who are new and are wondering what on earth is going on here, I raised some ant colonies in test tubes from captured queen ants 74 days ago and act as one super colony, which actually happens in some species. If we could get all 7 ant colonies to band together, I wouldn't have to let any of the experiments of the past. I went into this experiment blindly, without knowing whether or not the ant species I had were indeed polygynous. I only had a hunch that they were, based on what I saw with the wild colony at my place from which our queen ants originally came.
Guys,
Plus, I
everybody
knew there
click
were
here.
many
Do I click there?
polygynous carpenter ant species on the side of caution and separate the colonies before any precious ant lives were. Family, check out what I saw in the test tubes the next morning. Ant Colony 1. All
Dead.
the workers were full of food, but my heart dropped when I saw this.
Queen's dying. Mold.
The head and thorax of an ant that had been mercilessly torn in half. Colony 1 had committed ant murder overnight.
On their
I
own
was
though?
so saddened by this. I felt so bad for conducting this experiment. It seemed these ants, or at least this colony, was not willing to form an alliance with other ant colonies. I wondered which colony this murdered ant belonged to. I looked into the other test tubes and was devastated once more when I saw this.
Hold on. What if you were to take a microscopic needle, or like a pip, and put a little color on their back? Just a miniature, like a micro dot, to give them team names.
Another murdered ant in Colony 4. Its carcass lay lifeless
Blue-red,
in the
yep.
colony's garbage dump. Which ant colony did this ant belong to? I looked around further. Another dead ant carcass, spotted in
Never
Colony
bees?
6. No! Whose colony did this dead worker belong to? I eventually found my answer.
It's all their own.
I nearly cried when I checked up on Colony 8.
Hunter.
Each member stood still as I scanned the test tube. It seems overnight, Colony 8 had lost workers, and to my utter shock, all its brood. This means that one or more of the ant colonies had raided this ant nest, kidnapped all the babies, and murdered the colony's workers. The guilt I felt from seeing all of this was unbearable. I decided to separate all 7 ant colonies and not pursue with the mixing. I think I had enough evidence to determine that these ant colonies of ours were not peaceful to each other and would not blend together.
Okay, so you didn't film the raid?
This species of carpenter ants of ours were indeed monogynous and not polygynous. Thankfully, a few days after this mixing, I checked up on Colony 8 and was pleased to see that the queen had already begun to lay eggs to rebuild the initial army she had lost. I knew Colony 8 would soon bounce back. I would be feeding this ant colony extra food as my way of saying sorry and making things right. Now, AC family, at the start of this video, I mentioned that there would be a surprise reveal.
Guys, this sounds fake, but it's not. Hey, YouTuber, I'm not trying to be weird. It's not like I want blood, but some of these guys, they lost soldiers. You give them new ones, cool, but they need to get it back in blood to even out. They need some kills
as well
too.
As an important vote.
Like it.
I'll start first with the surprise
They got
reveal.
raided. They should be able to raid
Remember
the
Queen
opponents.
5? How she was behind on raising worker ants, and we suspected that perhaps she hadn't made it during her nuptial flight, and were waiting to see if her first adult ant would be a male ant. Because if it did turn out to be male, it indeed meant she hadn't made it and couldn't possibly create her own ant colony. Well, the first cocoon finally hatched this week, and this is the official gender reveal.
It died.
It was male. We were right. And sadly, it means all these babies are male ants.
Oh,
and that she hadn't successfully mated during her nuptial flight 74 days ago. If you're new to ants and don't understand how an unmated queen can go on to even give birth at all, it's strange, I know, but in ant genetics, unmated queen ants can actually go on to lay eggs, but they can only become male ants. Queens need the sperm of a male ant during her nuptial flight to produce females, i.e. worker ants. And so this queen here is pretty much doomed to die because male ants don't do any work.
Why
and won't be
are
able
the
to
queens?
take care of her. How sad. I think I'll hold on to her for a bit longer and see if maybe worker ants hatch from any of these other cocoons. But if not, I may bury her test tube to allow her to die naturally in the wild.
What if the ones that fly are actually females with a dong, and we have it all in reverse?
Unless you guys have some other suggestions. Like Trono Jensen mentioned in his comment, sometimes the result of an experiment might not have the outcome we want, and I was certainly reminded of this fact this week. I'm glad I separated the ant colonies while they were each still stable. I fear if I kept them together any longer, there would definitely have been much more bloodshed. I appreciate all of you who participated in the vote last week, but for those of you who are hoping to see a full-out ant war, I hate to disappoint you, but I'm afraid I just can't allow myself to do it. I do have footage of a wild ant war of fire ants here, if you would like to see what an epic ant war is like.
Guys,
but now for
let's be honest. Would it get demonetized if you had an ant world war massacre?
Another important vote, guys. Now, I feel at least one of our ant colonies might be ready for a home upgrade. Several of our ant colonies have many workers now, and I think it's time to attach one of these birth test tubes to something a bit more homey. But my question for you guys is, which colony should receive their new luxury ant farm mansion, this AC ant tower? Please vote in the pinned comments below. And as usual, AC family, your wish will be mine.
Yeah, one.
Command.
Guys, what makes the males males? Is it because they have the reproductive organ? Is that what dictates whether they're male or not? No, I know the wings. Yeah, that's the physiology. I mean, conceptually, is it because of a DNA or a fucking a thing, or is it just because it's the concept of having the reproductive thing? You know? See, a lot of good questions, not a lot of answers.